All right, here we go. In 3, in 2, in 1. Hey everyone, how's it going? Hello, hello, nice. I usually just open up with saying nice to see you, but I'm really not going to see you today, so maybe good to be seen. How's it going, everyone? My name is Victor Torres. I'm glad to be back with you guys here. I always get excited when I get to work with my Gary family. For some of the newer staff members that may be with that just are starting now in August, my name's Victor. I work with the Indiana IEP Resource Center. Our main office is located in Indianapolis. Myself, my colleague Patrick, and Rosalind, we work out of our Gary office. So again, I always get excited when I get to work with you guys. We've done some extensive work this year on MTSS. And it was great to see a lot of you last week. I'm actually recording this on July 29th. So it was great to see you guys on July 20th and 21st when we were at Westside. Many of you came to the PD series that was held. So it was just awesome to be in a room with all of you. You know, it was great to, just have interactions. So again, excited to be here. That day we talked about differentiating instruction, and today we're going to do an overview on an intro to universal design for learning. All right, now this training here can last week. This could be a whole day long session. I mean, there's so much in this framework, but it's so much good content. So today we're gonna spend about 30-45 minutes just kind of going through a nice overview. We'll have some common language around UDL, right? We'll be able to define it. I'll give you guys a nice definition from cast.org. By the way, that website, cast.org, is just full of information for universal design for learning. So that link is in one of the slides coming up. We're going to identify some benefits and components of UDL, and then also some strategies to begin implementing and considering, now at the top of the school year, all right? Now, in my sessions, I always like to have moments where, we would have polls, right? I always try to just be as engaging as possible. So we're not going to have that opportunity today, per se, for you guys to, complete a poll or, respond in the chat box, that kind of a thing. But I am going to still embed some questions throughout to give you guys a moment to either if you're watching the session by yourself, to have some self-reflection. Maybe you'll jot down an idea or two on a piece of paper. If you got a Google Doc open, just reflect. If you're with a small group, I would ask you to have a small group discussion with the person next to you. Or if you're in a large group, maybe you guys are all in the cafeteria and your admin said, hey, we're watching this. This is our PD for the week. I ask you to pause the video, either have like a think, pair, share, or talk to your neighbor, or just have a large group discussion on whatever the prompt may be, all right? And here is the first prompt, the first break that we're going to take. So real quick, I want you guys to just consider and reflect. Let me move myself out of the way here so I can read the whole question to you guys. What are some ways that you are currently, this past school year, that you supported some of your students? Maybe you already, I'm sure once we start talking about UDL, you're gonna be like, man, Victor, I do that already. And that's awesome. Maybe you just didn't know it was universal design for learning, right? What are maybe some accommodations that you provide for some students? How are you supporting them? What are ways maybe that in the past, pre-pandemic, because again, this pandemic school year, we had to adjust and look for other ways, to get around even instructing and supporting in these Zoom rooms, right? So what are some things maybe you want to begin to do again that maybe you got away from because of the distance learning that we had? So again, couple-minute reflection for you guys, just either, again, if you're by yourself, reflect. If you're with a group of people, have a discussion. What are some ways that you're supporting students? All right, so I'm gonna take a sip of my water and you're going to start discussing. Boom, pause the video right now. All right, so I'm assuming you guys have paused and now we're back. So, and I'm sure you had many ways, many ideas on how you are supporting your students, right? Because, we're teachers, right? We're always looking for ways, the best practices, we get to know our students, so we're always finding ways to just support them. But before we move on into some of the strategies in the framework, I wanted to just have some common language and some consensus with all of us. And I wanted to show you this graphic here on really just what's the difference, right, between when we discuss UDL or SDI, specially designed instruction, accommodations, modifications. What's the difference? And I'll give you guys just a brief moment just to kind of look at, the definitions here on the right-hand side. So you got UDL, you got SDI, which is specially designed for a specific individual. Okay, so we know as our students with special education, they receive special ed supports. That's what that is, right? That specially designed instruction that's helping them, that explicit teaching and modeling, right? We have accommodations that we provide to a student or students to help them fully access the general education curriculum, right? Maybe it's a specific support or service. We've got modifications, which, at times they're needed, right? We have to alter the learning goal, and really change the required work and the content. But you'll notice when you read the definition of UDL, Universal Design for Learning, it's purposely designed without a specific individual in mind. And that's the key of this being universal, right? It's for all students. When we talk about this UDL framework versus other frameworks, we're really empowering our students to be lifelong learners. And you'll learn about that in a couple of slides down the road. But really, we're looking to create barrier-free learning. We're allowing all of our students to access the general education curriculum, the content, right? To access their peers in the classroom, to show us what they're learning, different ways for them to engage and in the classroom, right? And again, it's for all students. It's beneficial for all right? Here is that definition, that standard definition for universal design. So I think I'm going to go ahead and hide this guy. That way you can see my entire screen, because I keep having to move myself. Then I want you guys to see me, so I'm going to move myself around here so you guys can see my slides, all right? So here is the definition, standard definition, a framework to improve. I'm not going to read it to you guys. You guys are already read it, right? But again, feel free to click on this link. Go to CAS.org. This is, evidence-based framework concepts, tons of resources on their site. So feel free to explore. But again, I wanted to give you guys just a standard definition on UDL. All right, what does it mean? Universal Design for Learning. Now, I want to share a brief video here with you guys from the website that I really like the way it's a quick 4-minute video, but I like the way they interpret and summarize the framework. So I'm going to go ahead and press play. Again, it's a quick little 4-minute video, and then we will come right back, all right? Oh, there we go.
This teacher needs to meet a curriculum goal, and she's got a very diverse group of students. And so does this teacher. And this one. Most do. In fact, research shows that the way people learn is as unique as their fingerprints. What does this mean for teachers of today? Classrooms are highly diverse, and curriculum needs to be designed from the start to meet this diversity. Universal Design for Learning is an approach to curriculum that minimizes barriers and maximizes learning for all students. Whoa, that's a fancy term. Universal Design for Learning. Let's unpack it a bit. Let's think about the word universal. By universal, we mean curriculum that can be used and understood by everyone. Each learner in the classroom brings her own background, strengths, needs, and interests. Curriculum should provide genuine learning opportunities for each and every student. Now let's think about the word learning. Learning is not one thing. Neuroscience tells us that our brains have 3 broad networks. One for recognition, the what of learning, one for skills and strategies, the how of learning, and one for caring and prioritizing, the why of learning. Students need to gain knowledge, skills, and enthusiasm for learning, and a curriculum needs to help them do all 3. But every learner is unique, and one size does not fit all. So how do we make a curriculum that challenges and engages diverse learners? This is where the word design comes in. A universally designed building is planned to be flexible and to accommodate all kinds of users, with and without disabilities. It turns out that if you design for those in the margins, your building works better for everyone. Curb cuts and ramps are used by people in wheelchairs, people with strollers, and people on bikes. Captioning on TV serves people who are deaf, people learning English, people in gyms, and spouses who get to sleep at different times. UDL takes this idea and applies it to the design of flexible curriculum. UDL goes beyond access because we need to build in support and challenge. So how do we use the UDL framework to make learning goals, methods, materials, and assessments that work for everyone? First, ask yourself, what is my goal? What do I want my students to know, do, and care about? Then ask, what barriers in the classroom might interfere with my diverse students reaching these goals? To eliminate the barriers, use the 3 UDL principles to create flexible paths to learning so that each student can progress. Number 1, provide multiple means of representation. Present content and information in multiple media and provide varied supports. Use graphics and animation, highlight the critical features, activate background knowledge, and support vocabulary so that students can acquire the knowledge being taught. Number 2, provide multiple means of action and expression. Give students plenty of options for expressing what they know and provide models, feedback, and supports for their different levels of proficiency. Number 3, provide multiple means of engagement. What fires up one student won't fire up another. Give students choices to fuel their interests and autonomy. Help them risk mistakes and learn from them. If they love learning, they will persist through challenges. And remember, always keep in mind the learning goal. Get rid of barriers caused by the curriculum and keep the challenge where it belongs. And that's it. Okay, quick recap. Show the information in different ways. Allow your students to approach learning tasks and demonstrate what they know in different ways, and offer options that engage students and keep their interest. Universal design for learning equals learning opportunities for all. For more information on UDL, go to www.cast.org.
All right. Thank you guys for watching that video. Again, I really like their the way they, the presentation, the dialogue of that. Just another way to, you guys may have learned more, and that's the essence of UDL. That's why I wanted to have that video there. I know some of you guys are like, yeah, Victor, I could have watched that on my own, but even still here, I'm modeling for you. I mean, just think about it. Some of you guys may have learned more about UDL when we're done in the next 20 minutes here. You may have learned more by watching that 4-minute video than by me being as all over the place and talking to you guys about UDL. That may have been more impactful for you guys than by my discussion today. So again, having multiple ways to engage for the students to learn, different ways for them to hear and see and interpret the content. That's the essence of UDL. Now, when we talk about UDL, it's such a powerful instructional model because we do these things before we begin to plan. So when we sit down at our tables, we already have and are considering what are our student needs. And as you get to know them, you're going to know what, some of their deficiencies are. What are some of their abilities? What are some of their interests, their strengths? What are some of the learning goals that some students have? And you're doing this before you begin to plan, because oftentimes, we plan lessons and we adapt and change them afterwards, right? But we're considering our student unique profiles before, as we begin to plan. We already have this mindset, and it's so important to have this mindset and to consider these things, because again, it allows you to create that barrier-free learning experience that the video just discussed with you guys. So again, this is the framework here that we have for UDL, and this is derived from the CAST website. So again, a framework full of choice and flexibility. So we have multiple means of engagement, the why of learning, right? So I'll give you guys just a brief little summary for each one, and then we'll move on with actually some strategies that you guys can begin to use in your classrooms. All right, so when we talk about multiple means of engagement, right, we're looking to engage our students, why of learning. And as you know, we have some students that really benefit and are engaged and motivated by having spontaneous acts in the classroom. You know what I mean? Like if you have music playing, like they enjoy like having just beginning the day with maybe a brain break, that kind of a thing. So, and that's great. But then also we know that we have our students that, they're like, wait a minute, Mr. Torres, like I don't like the structured chaos you got going on here. Like, I need my routines, I need my structure, I need my predictability, right? And being aware that all of our students are not all the same. So having multiple ways for students to engage in the instruction, all right? Now, when we look at multiple means of representation, you're giving them an opportunity, you're showing them the content in different ways, right? So again, me just having this discussion with you, there was that video that I just showed you guys, right? So that's multiple means of representation, the what of learning, giving them options on how they will comprehend and interpret the information, all right? Finally, multiple means of action and expression, the how of learning. So, we have some students that, they really struggle with writing, you know what I mean, or typing, right? So allowing them, maybe you're giving them the opportunity to tell you what they've learned, or to tell you the learning of what you're looking for mastery for, right? So giving them multiple ways to express themselves and to show you what they've learned and how they are interpreting the content. Now, looking at a few strategies here for engagement. I always feel like I had strong engagement because I just would have random things, in the classroom. But here are just a couple of just little tidbits. And again, my hope is that some of you already are using some of these strategies, but because of the pandemic school year, we might have got away from some of them. So as you can begin to consider, based on if you're a hybrid, still in person, mixed, right? What are some ways that you can engage the students that enjoy the spontaneous learning, the novelty pieces? What are ways that you can also continue to engage and support those students who need that structure, right? So providing choices, you know what I mean? Like, that's something we talked about it last week with differentiating our instruction, using choice boards, choice menu boards, not only with instruction, but even in the classroom in multiple tasks, right? Giving them the opportunity to own that learning more, to own the classroom floor. And you're now also developing that sense of belonging because they see themselves as a part of that decision making. So having interactive games, collaborative teamwork, the flexible grouping, allowing opportunities for self-reflection. Earlier, I asked you guys to pause and self-reflect, right? Some of you guys, that was great. You enjoyed that. You were like, yeah, I needed that moment to really consider and think, right? Now, there's some students, though, that benefit from, they're different kind of learners. So if you're in a small group, maybe some of you would have preferred to have that discussion with your peers, right? With your colleagues. So again, having multiple ways for students to engage. In my previous sessions, I love starting my sessions off with music videos, like just music, just to kind of get, like, even myself, like I'm just getting myself going, so having music in the classroom, I would have funny moments. Like I was telling the group last week, I had the Jeopardy music queued on my desktop when I was teaching. So when I would have students come up to share on the whiteboard, I would press the music and they would just get a good laugh, you know what I mean? Just to lighten it up some. So always having real life examples, looking for ways to have real world connections with the students is super essential, because in that way, the students can see themselves in the classroom, see themselves in the content. Now, for engagement, I got to move my, oh no, Victor, go back. Hold on. Here we go. Oh, my screen is stuck. Hold on a second. I got to go back to that slide. I love using GIFs. Some of you guys are cracking up right now looking at Steve Carroll, looking at you. I think that's his name, Steve Carroll. Yeah, that's Steve Carroll. Looking at you like, yeah, am I engaging you? You know what I mean? So use some Giphies in your presentations, you know what I mean? So, but one thing that I really liked using and really loved in my lessons was I always used interest surveys in the classroom. At the beginning of the school year, all the time. Sometimes I would even have interest surveys in my bell ringers, or questions, I should say, in my bell ringers or in my exit tickets. And sometimes they would be random questions like, what did you do yesterday after school? And some of the students would be like, Mr. Torres, man, why are you asking me what I did? And I'm like, dude, just tell me what you did after school. It's a free point. Answer the question. All right. But what they didn't know was I'm getting to know them. So now, since I know what you're doing, what activities you're into after school, what are your interests, I have opportunities to have conversations with you now, right? Like, hey, so how was bowling? Or hey, did you guys win last night at the game? You know, that kind of a thing opens up conversations. But then at the same token, I would apply their interests into my content. So if I knew that I had a group of students that were really into, I mean, hey, the Olympics are going on right now. If I knew that some of them were watching the Olympic Games, you better believe I'm going to find articles on New Zealand, real world connections, like real articles that talk about the now and use that in my content. So if, let's say we're working on making inferences or summarizing, we're going to be reading about something that they're into, right? So looking for ways to, again, to have those real world connections via those student interest surveys. So I would encourage you to use interest survey. You can even just Google student interest survey PDF, pull those questions, put them in a Google form, add them all throughout the school year. It's so beneficial. Right now, here are some just checkpoints and guidelines on the why, right? On engaging students. So some things to reflect and consider, you know, as you're planning your instruction, right? Did you build in some choice? Do my students feel safe in this classroom? How do I know? How do I know that the work is meaningful and valuable? Are you allowing moments for self-reflection for the students and for yourself too? Do the students have the necessary skills to work through these tasks? You know? So again, just some checkpoints and guidelines that I wanted to leave you guys with to, as you're planning and preparing your lessons, you know, feel free to pull up this PowerPoint and be like, hey man, and again, should have mentioned this at the beginning. Again, UDL has 3 frameworks: engagement, representation, multiple means of action and expression. I'm not expecting you to put all of this into your lesson plan on day 1. Pick one, right? Maybe you're like, hey, I'm strong with engagement. Some of these things that Victor mentioned, I do them already. So maybe you're going to want to focus on representation or action and expression. All right. So again, consider, and we'll talk about that a little more as you begin. I have some slides later on that'll give you some ideas on how you can begin to prepare. But again, I just wanted to preface that. So, you know, again, some of you guys are gonna be like, man, this is getting overwhelming already, right? So don't want you to feel overwhelmed. Just, again, consider what, as we're moving through the next 2 pillars, what are some things that you're already good at? And maybe what are some things that you can begin to bring into your planning, into your instruction. Now, looking at multiple means of representation, the what of learning, right? So again, we're giving students multiple ways to interpret, multiple ways to understand the content. So using videos, just like I did earlier. Again, some of you guys may have learned, you're going to go back, watch that video because their explanation was better than mine, or you found a connection to their explanation more than mine, right? So looking for ways to have them multiple ways for students to understand and comprehend the content. How about closed captioning? I wonder how many of you guys already noticed that at the bottom of my screen, I have closed captioning. Some of you guys right now may be watching this alone and you're, I don't know, you're maybe doing you're multitasking, right? As teachers, we're multitaskers. You're benefiting from reading rather than listening. Think about your students using closed captioning in your PowerPoints. There's research behind it that says, you know, even having closed captioning on videos is beneficial for our emerging readers. And this is one thing, you know, that I'll show you guys on the next slide, how you can trigger it in Microsoft and PowerPoint, right? So having a variety of books, literature, magazines, different graphics, right? So looking for multiple ways for the students to interpret and to comprehend the content. Now, looking at closed captioning here, all right? So real quick, I'm gonna show you guys how I triggered it. I'm gonna get out of present mode. So let's see if I remember this. Let me hide this guy up here. So when you're in PowerPoint, and I'm gonna move my guy right here, you're at home, right? And then I'm gonna slide my cursor over to slideshow, click on slideshow, and then you'll see here on the right side of my screen, it says always use subtitles. So I just clicked on that button, bam. Now when I'm in present mode, the computer is hearing, like you can even make sure that it's on the internal microphone right here. You see how it was the drop down menu? I didn't even realize it may even interpret in different languages. If you had students that, you know, are learning the English language, this would be so beneficial for them as well. As you see on the screen too, emerging readers, deaf or hard of hearing, and ELL learners, right? So making sure that your microphone's on, and boom, yeah, that's it. That's one UDL quick trick that you can use. It doesn't require you to plan. It's just, you're just clicking a button. And look at how, like, you know, it's now you're giving students an opportunity to comprehend in different ways. And that's what we need. That's what they need, right? So let me go ahead and go back into present mode here. And let's see, look, it says listening and myself. There, we're back. All right. Let's see here. Let's move on to the next slide. So I wanted to make sure that I left you guys with a variety of resources. So I'll make sure that the rest of my team members have the PowerPoint presentation. That way they could send it out to all the buildings. But I wanted to leave some links here for you guys and some websites that'll give you opportunities for representation, for engagement, for action and expression. So here we have, I mentioned earlier, New Zealand, right? There's articles that are real world connections, right? The Smithsonian magazine. Flocabulary is I think there's like a free version, but it's like just music videos and songs per se on some of the content that students can, interpret, and they may benefit from memorizing a jingle rather than telling them, right? Even using TikTok, getting it, with the technology now. There's two articles here I found on how you can use TikTok in the classroom to allow students, another way to comprehend via those short videos that you may work on. So again, just some resources and strategies here that I wanted to just leave you guys with, in case, again, this is the area you're like, you know what, I know this is where I'm going to begin. This is what I'm going to emphasize this school year on giving the students multiple means of representation. All right, now, again, some guidelines, some checkpoints for you. Things to consider, do students have and need, do they have the background knowledge, right, that they need to comprehend and to be able to engage in the content? If you're going to spend for some of those students, you're going to want to make sure that you review. You may want to pre-teach some concepts to some because they lack that background knowledge. Are there any language barriers with the students, right? Did I give enough customization for the students to be able to receive the information, right? Did I chunk my big idea? Are they aware of the big ideas? Can they explain? So just some ideas, just some checkpoints for you guys to consider as you plan your lessons, all right? Now let's go ahead and move on to action and expression, the last pillar of the three of the UDL framework, right? So when we think about action and expression, again, we're giving students a variety of ways to express themselves. Now, as you know, some students, they do great with whiteboards, with doodling. Why not for some of them? Again, if the learning objective and the learning, and this is sometimes a hard concept to grasp, right? But if the learning objective, if the learning goal is the same for all students, who cares how they show you what they learned, right? If the learning goal is for again, the learning goal is the same for everybody, give them opportunities to show you what they've learned. Some students struggle with written text. Why not allowing them to use oral speech, maybe text to speech in their device? Maybe you're allowing them to create a graphic, a poster, a model. Instead of using essays, there's other ways for students to show you what they've learned. So being open to that concept, that again, if your learning objective is for the students to, and I always go, but we talked about this with differentiating instruction when you differentiate the product, right? If the learning goal is for the students to be able to make an inference and use text evidence, hey, if they can type it out, if they can write it out, if they can speak it out, if they can record a video and send it to you, we're looking for mastery of the content. So give them options to express. So here is, again, another graphic that awesome book resources. I'll show you guys in a couple of slides for Paula Kluth, but consider one of these alternate assessment tools in your next lesson. Maybe you'll allow them to, hey, maybe you're going to use Padlet and you're going to do some kind of like a blog post or Wakelet. Maybe you're going to have learning stations where students can show you what they learned. Maybe you're going to ask them to create a proposal or a poster session, record a recording as if they're doing a podcast. Right. So again, just thinking of alternate ways for students to show you, what they know, how they learn. Do they have mastery of the content? Here's another graphic that I saw from Paula Kluth. She did in February this year, a virtual PD matter of fact, this one was from Focus on Inclusion 2021 that it was all, just via Zoom, but she had this awesome tic-tac-toe board for algebra. And as you see, it gives students multiple ways to show you what they learned. You're using Wakelet to make a collection. Maybe some of you are going to use Zoom, continue to use Zoom, even in person, to have the students talk things through with you. So that way you're like, Victor really is catching the concept. You know what I mean? Maybe my son's teacher, they use Flipgrid this past school year. That was such an awesome resource. I think I have it here. Yep, on the next slide. Flipgrid. So I'm sure some of you guys may already be familiar, but that was one where you can record a question, and the students then record a video of themselves. So you can either type the question in, you can make a small recording telling the students what the task is, and then instead of writing it out, typing it out, they're recording themselves giving you the answer. So there would be a couple of times, when they were Zooming from home that I would watch. My son was in 4th grade. He's gonna be in 5th grade this year, and I'm kind of animated, like, and talking, but this guy's like, he's if I'm 10, he's 100. Like, he's like, he wakes up in the morning just ready to go. And so there'd be some days I'm in the room and I'm typing and I'm working and I hear him like rapping and making up lyrics and joking. And I'm like, dude, like, aren't you supposed to? He's like, shh, Dad, I'm recording. Oh, my bad, bro, my bad, all right. But again, he was engaged in the instruction, right? He was showing what he learned. And I mean, he was getting his work done. He's telling the teacher, he was summarizing the story, or he was telling her the plot of the conflict and the resolution, So again, just thinking of different ways to allow students for action and expression, all right? Now, here are just, again, some guidelines and checkpoints to help you reflect and plan your lesson planning. Again, if this is the area that you're going to focus on, do I have the tools available for my students? The technology pieces, are they going to be able to use? Have I modeled for them how to use Flipgrid if that's something that you want to use? Do they have, again, choice in the way that they respond? And also keeping in mind the executive functioning of some of our students that, again, some of them, benefit from being able to have truly benefit, them having to sit and get is not the way, us as adults. I'm sure some of you guys may have paused this and been like, yeah, Victor, I'll be back. You ain't going to know I left. So thinking of ways, again, that you're giving them options to express and show you what they have learned. All right. Now, I'm sure some of you guys are thinking like, man, Victor, this is really good. It's going great. But how do I begin to implement? And again, some of you may have asked yourself the question, well, how many methods of assessment do I need? Or how many tools am I supposed to provide? How many supports? And it's going to be based on your student needs. You're going to want to provide them whatever they need to be successful that is within the control of your learning environment, okay? So what skills do they need to continue to grow? So you're going to get to know your students. You're going to want to, as you get to know them and learn their interests, learn their abilities, start small. You know what I mean? Like, here's some quick examples for you. Let's say you have some emerging readers, right? And I'm sure you're like, yeah, Victor, I got a class full of those, right? Struggle with comprehension. Maybe first, one thing that you could begin to do is just do some video recordings for them, right? Like, just the way I'm recording this in Zoom right now, maybe you're going to want to do the same thing with a model, a quick model for the students. There's Screencast-O-Matic is a screen recording app that you can record the screen, you model the task for them, and then upload it into your learning management system. Maybe you're going to want to record, as you're doing your lectures in the classroom, continue to, we had to do it via Zoom, right? But maybe continue recording your lectures and upload them so that way when students get home and they forgot, what was I supposed to do again? Or I don't know what main idea. I don't know what that is. I forgot. What is it? How many statements do I need in my summary? Or any small things like that. You know what I mean? Like, maybe you're just going to start with that. What if you have some students who are learning English? Maybe one small lift that you could do there is to look to really explicitly teach those vocabulary words. Or maybe they have the translation tools, but they just don't know how to use them. So again, just some quick examples here to begin to consider. Again, you don't have to revamp your entire, just think of easy ways that you could begin using, maybe even using one of those websites that I have on the PowerPoint for you. Just look for just some quick ways that you could begin to alter your instruction, and again, provide them as many choices as possible to create that barrier-free learning. Here's another useful tip for you guys as you begin to implement. I mentioned earlier to you that there's some of you that already have some of these things in place. Some of you guys do already have multiple ways that they engage, have multiple ways that they can express what they've learned, have multiple ways for them to represent. So as I would go through, and you could take this moment right now and pause the video, and just reflect, what am I really good at? What my so I'm going to get to know my students' strengths, but think about your teacher strengths. What are you good at? What are you strong at? And maybe build on that. If you have a sensory safe classroom where you feel like, students feel welcome and they know that they can, move around, and again, with social distancing, and it's going to be a lot more different in person, but maybe if you have a sensory safe classroom, you're going to look at just maybe embedding some more flexible grouping. Hey, maybe some of you guys never even considered using the live captioning in your slideshows. Start there. That's a good lift right there. If some of you guys are strong with your verbal models, maybe you're going to want to add more visuals. You, by seeing the building blocks on the screen, may be like, building on my strengths. I got it. Made sense, Victor. I'm good. So looking to have more visuals, more visual prompts, more models, visual models, I should say, rather than all auditory, all right? And again, thinking of different ways of action and expression. Maybe you'll get to know, hey, man, I have a strong class of writers. Maybe you're going to allow them to create comic strips or to create a short script, a play or a video, right, that shows you that they are able to make inferences or they were able to summarize a story. Like, just begin to consider, what are your strengths and how can you build more on those? So if you guys want right now, feel free to pause the video, reflect, talk to some of your neighbors. If you're in a group with your colleagues, and say, hey, maybe you're going to tell your colleague, you know what, Patrick, hey, man, you're great at doing this. I think your strength is this, man. And you may be like, wow, like I probably never thought about that. I guess I am pretty good with technology, right? Or I guess I do really explain things well. Maybe I'm going to look to have more visuals. Or maybe you're the person that has great visuals, but the instructions, you could get stronger with that verbally. So again, pause the video, reflect, what are your assess and build, right? What are your strengths and what can you look to add and build onto that, all right? All righty, so you guys took a quick break. You found out your strengths, so now you already know, hey, you know what? My strength was engagement. I'm gonna work on action ways for representation, right? So you're ready to go, you're good to go. Let's go ahead and finish the last half of our session today. We're doing good with time too. All righty, so you're probably wondering, why, Victor? Why are we talking about UDL? Why? Tell me why. Here is why. It's embedded in our Every Student Will Succeed Act in the Indiana plan, right? As we've talked a lot about, I'm so happy because I think now for some of you viewing this blueprint for success, right, that our state has outlined, you see MTSS. We've done a lot of work this year around MTSS, but now you see at the top, when you have this Universal for Design for Learning framework embedded into your practices, you see how it ties in to that tier 1 instruction. And we talked about MTSS, when we talked about multiple tiers of instruction and intervention, ensuring that your tier 1 instruction is the strongest. So again, by having a UDL framework embedded into your tier 1, like we're talking about barrier-free learning that's beneficial for all of our students. Now, I got a quick reflective moment for you guys here, another moment to pause the video. And I want you to think for a second, how do you feel you learn best? Are you a visual learner? Are you somebody that, really, I need to be hands-on, building, working out? Are you a note taker? Like, how do you learn best? And when did you learn this about yourself? So go ahead and pause the video, reflect. How do you feel you learn best? And when did you learn this about yourself? All right, now we're back. Now, when I did this with people, right, in the room or via Zoom, the response was like, hey, I learn best when I have a moment to digest the information for myself and write down notes. Or I'm an auditory learner, like I can hear it, I visually see it, I'm good. Now, the thing that I noticed though the most was a lot of the participants in the session said, Hey, Victor, I learned this about myself when I was in college, when I started teaching. My senior year in high school, it was a lot when they got a lot older. Now, think about our students, our younger students. Do you think they know they learn best? Probably not, right? But the thing is, you are an expert learner because you know how you learn best, right? You are an expert learner. Yes, you right now, you. Now think about our students. How much more empowering and powerful would it be for us to teach them, to help them learn how they learn best? I mean, wow, think about how empowering would it be for our elementary students, our middle school, our high school students to learn how they learn best? Because now, once they know how they learn best, they're much more purposeful. They're much more motivated, right? When you know that you're going to have, again, some of you guys are like, oh my gosh, I'm zoomed out. But coming in person to hear somebody speak, you're more motivated. Or if it's a topic that you know that's going to have some kind of a hands-on connection, you're more strategic and goal oriented, right? Goal directed. So again, this is an essence of UDL, to really develop students who are all of these three, resourceful and knowledgeable, but we have to, as early as we can, begin to help them learn how they learn best. That way they become expert learners sooner rather than later. All right. Now we're at the end of our session today. And I think Patrick would be happy because I think he told me about an hour. And I think I got about an hour's worth here. So yeah, we're doing pretty good. All right, so I want to share some resources with you guys. Paula Kluth just released the second edition to this book, Universal Design for Learning. 365 ways to teach, support, and challenge all learners. This book is probably like one of my favorites. It's here in the office with me. I just don't want to get off the screen and go grab it. But yeah, I used concepts from the first edition and the second edition in preparing this PD. So great, awesome resource for you guys to check out. So I pulled a couple of ways to to share with you guys on how you can begin to prepare. So, and as we mentioned earlier, you heard in the video, we're looking to break the barriers, right? So again, think about even physically, you know what I mean? If we had a student who or people in general, you know what I mean? We see sidewalks where there are ramps for, people who are in wheelchairs or have, are walking in crutches. It's easier for them to get up, right, and access the sidewalk. So I'm hoping that this visual will then interpret for you guys and be like, what are ways that you can get rid of the barriers for the students and allow them to access and smoothly think of the sidewalk as the content, as the classroom, as the curriculum. How can I create barrier-free learning for my students? One thing that you could do is, again, look to ways to begin to break those barriers, right? Again, if you notice that the students learn the best, right, by visually, but directions are only giving verbally, that's a barrier because we're not addressing all of our students, right? They're not understanding, they're not comprehending because we're only giving them the verbal, not the visual. So again, what are ways that you could break the barrier by also having directions listed visually as well? So doing both, talking through the directions, talking through the checklist, but also having the visual of the checklist for the students that need to see it in order to understand it, to comprehend it. Now, think about some students who struggle mightily to write longhand. So taking essay tests are a barrier. One lift there, maybe you're going to allow them to use text to speech. Maybe you're going to use something like Flipgrid or allow them to record a video to tell you their summary or to answer that long question. Because again, if we're just wanting for the student to give us the main idea and provide 3 supporting details, if they can talk it to you and tell it to you, and there's footage of it, like evidence, I'm okay with that. Like, again, that's the learning objective. Main idea, 3 supporting details, boom. All right, so again, look ways to break some of those barriers. Here's a strategy that I found that I didn't do this one. I wish I would have known. I think I did some of this in the class, but not like really play favorites. I didn't have a title for it. So think about a way, once you get your class list, right, make a pile of index cards and put a student's name on each card, right? Now, Or another way is pick a letter of the alphabet for the day. And then by those students, you're going to, if maybe the first letter is A, right? Or maybe the index card are the students, the first 5 students. So by playing favorites, you're going to maybe for those specific 5, for those specific 3, you'll, based on your class sizes, maybe for that group of students on that given day, you're going to spend just a couple of extra minutes talking to them. Maybe it's goal oriented, maybe it's academic feedback, maybe it's something off their interest, right? Maybe you're going to spend a little more time that day examining their work and giving them some feedback on it. Maybe for a group of students, you're going to leave the last 10 minutes before you leave the building, you're going to send a sincere compliment or a message home, maybe an email, a quick phone call. You'll tell that student as they're leaving, just something else that they can be, again, going back to that community of sense of belonging in our classrooms, right? This is definitely a way that you can look to continue to make relationships with your students, but you're also giving them a little more time. And again, even and you make this an academic piece, you know what I mean? Where you're going to examine their work and give them a little more academic feedback than you would on a typical day, all right? That's another way you can begin to prepare for UDL. Now, when we think about our traditional lesson planning model, right? We typically determine what students need to know and what we want them to be able to do at the conclusion, right, of the learning experience. So we know what students need to know. We know what we want them to be able to do by the end of the learning experience, right? Then we begin to develop our related materials. We begin to develop our activities, right? What are the things that they're going to do to show us at the conclusion of the learning experience, right? Now, one thing that I want you guys to consider too as well is after we develop the related materials and activities, then we consider for ways on how we're going to adapt it for those who cannot necessarily access. Now, this is the traditional lesson planning model, right? Again, we know what we want the students to do by the end of the learning experience. We then create the related learning materials and activities. And lastly, we begin to adapt it for those that have maybe some learning disabilities or language, that aren't able to, maybe English language learners. We think about them at the end. But how can the needs of some inspire design for all? Start with the struggles. Again, typically we end with the struggles. How about you start your lesson planning on some days with the struggles? Let's say you have students or a specific student, and you may be like, no, Victor, I have multiple students that need lots of movement. How can you embed those walking breaks, those brain breaks throughout the learning experience that'll help all students remain engaged and help them all retain the material? So again, the needs of one or some, again, beneficial for all. There's a saying that I've heard, there's some things that are critical for some, but beneficial for all. What about students who have a hard time with written directions? Maybe you're going to have, again, and some of you guys are like, nah, Victor, it's the whole class. So having a wide range of visuals in the classroom to really help them, give them clarity on the expectations and allow them more opportunities to work independently, so really having, again, starting with the students that struggle the most and using those needs to maybe address the needs of all the classroom. Because again, some things that are critical for some can be beneficial for all. All right, now here's another, again, using that CAST website, take inventory. Maybe you're going to want to, you're like, hey man, this really caught my attention. Go onto the website, take a look at the guidelines. Again, there's many more ideas for you to pull from there. Maybe again, you're looking for more ways to engage. Start with this, right? Again, talking to your students at the beginning of the school year, using those interest surveys, find out what are some of their favorite activities or supports. What are some helpful tools that, hey, you didn't even know about that? You know what I mean? Like, what are ways that they find things to be meaningful, right? Talking to the families, getting feedback on how they, what are the kids saying when they come home from school? Like, how do they say their day went? What is the part of the day that they enjoy the most? How are they talking about the instruction? That'll then help you, again, guide and critique and enhance the way that you're providing choice for the students in your classroom. Here's a variety of websites that, technology, right? Like we all kind of got pushed into it this last school year with the pandemic year, but continue to use these strong technology pieces. I found this awesome website, The Cult of Pedagogy. She's got like this awesome blog, but this one was specifically with 6 ed tech tools that you can use in your classrooms. So again, feel free to dive through these resources and look for ways that you can continue to enhance your classroom via technology. All right, so we've come to the conclusion of our time today. And I want you to just, again, pause the video and answer one or both of the questions, all right? So you used to think UDL was blank. Now I think that it is. Or consider which one of the 3 pillars, action and expression, representation, or engagement, will you focus on for this upcoming school year? So I'll give you guys a brief moment to pause the video to reflect, to have a small group discussion, answer one of the questions or both, all right? All right. You're awesome, guys. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate you for your time. I look forward to working with you guys again soon. Everybody take care and have an awesome school year. Best of luck to all you guys. You guys got it. Thank you so much for your time. Everybody take care, all right?